Good evening, everybody. This is Divided We Stand. It's Saturday night, the 6th of January, so we're already into 2024. If you're new to this show, we are on Facebook and YouTube, and currently on Instagram too, so that's a good thing for us. If you have not subscribed to this channel on YouTube, we ask that you do subscribe and commiserate with us. We're somewhat of a team. We're trying to pull our commiserating forces together, come up with ideas on how we can defeat the Republican Party in the future. So please join. We also are not monetized, so understand that. We don't look for anything from you, so we would appreciate if you would join us. Also, if be a part of that. All right. So, okay, here we go. Guest is in the green room. That's weird. Okay, so let's switch to my buddy David Price. And shall move on. David.
Well, of course, the first mystery has been solved. Could you ever start a show without problems? So far, we've lost your vocals, and somehow you managed to mute mine and take me into the green room and not be on the show.
No,
So
we're
again,
okay. I think we're okay.
well, now we're okay, but this isn't one to submit for the Emmy or the any of those other awards. And it only took you it was maybe 10 seconds into the show. So it's going to be a good year. I can see that some things have not changed, and people count on you. I think a lot of times to they can judge their own lives and say, well, at least I'm not Brian Weinstein starting the Divided We Stand show. So you do a great service to people, and as I've said before, and I'll continue to say it, you are to video casting what Donald Trump is to the presidency, and that makes you who you are. Hey, Brian,
Well,
how's your New Year been so
Happy
far?
New Year. There's an old Russian saying that, how you start your New Year's Eve is kind of how your year's going to go. And, actually, we weren't on New Year's. Were we on New Year's Eve?
No, we
No.
decided no.
No.
Remember, you said
It would
you
be
were
best
drunk.
just to
You said you were drunk,
Yeah.
and then you shot up, and then you tried to do Ritalin so you could kind of commute with what's his name there, the number whatever that president was who's trying to run again. So you were bonding with the peeps.
So what's new with you, Dave?
Not much. I think I will say this: if the pace continues the way it was in the first 6 days of January concerning election news, we're going to be burnt out before February comes. Not the show. I'm just saying people. I don't ever think I've seen a week in recent memory like this when we haven't even really, we haven't really started. January 1st starts the 2024. It's a new year. But, really, the campaign is not supposed to kick in until the primaries, which, we're still waiting in Iowa. But, we got a ton of stuff to talk about. So what's your big story or big takeaway from the week?
Well, actually, my entire concern is about the Supreme Court right now. The very fact that they're going to listen to the appeal gives me an ominous feeling, and that was what I put in the description for tonight's show. Because a lot of times, even a conservative court like the Trump court right now, I don't even call it the Roberts court, I call it the Trump court, there will be some sensibility. And in this case, there was just no doubt in my mind that they were going to accept Trump's appeal. And then just the very fact that they're going to accept it makes me feel this thing's headed for a 5-4. And kind of like what you were saying, that John Roberts, he wants to have some type of legacy, and he certainly can't do it with this court. So he knows how far to the right it's gone, and even though he is on the right, it's now in a situation that he can simply vote with the more liberals in the court, and still everything's fine because it'll be 5-4. And that's exactly where I think it's going to go. I think it's going to go 5-4. If it doesn't go 5-4, of course, it'll go 6-3. I believe Gorsuch, Barrett will all be on Trump's side in this case for Colorado. But I think, Dave, what got to me was maybe about an hour before we went on the air. In fact, I'm probably not even going to show the video because it's probably not worth showing it. But there was a videotape from January 6th. And of course, this is the 3rd anniversary of that. And you see the mob where they had the doors where they had the broken glass and where that one woman was shot, thankfully. You had 2 Republican congressmen who were confronting this mob, and you could see they were getting angry with the mob. And it reminded me of Lindsey Graham at the airport. This is, after January 6th. And they were coming after Lindsey Graham, and then he changed his tune. And then it's nothing's really dawned on me because I've kind of felt this. It was just something that was intuitive. That the Republicans have gone down the rabbit hole, and now they're not afraid of us. They are afraid of their own constituents. And I think that this fear is going to run through the Supreme Court, even though many on the Supreme Court are Trumpian. I think that if any one of them felt like they should do the right thing, they won't do it because they're afraid. You've seen how Republicans were complaining about the fact that people were protesting in front of Brett Kavanaugh's house. Well, I don't think Brett Kavanaugh was ever really worried about any kind of violence that, people, protested. But you can bet if there's any violence that they're afraid of, it will be their own. And if you turn on your own with these type of lunatics, Trump will send them out after you. So, long story short, I'm going to speculate, Dave, and I'm going to let you speculate. I'm going to speculate the very fact that they're accepting this appeal. They will go in Trump's favor. And I believe Gorsuch will do a 180. I know that part of this Colorado attempt to get him off the ballot cites a case where Gorsuch mentions the state has rights to do something exactly like this. And this is where I think Gorsuch will hide his tail, and he will somehow undo what he did. So I'm going to let you speculate, Dave.
Let's see. Okay, you want me to speculate? I think the Eagles will lose tomorrow to the... No, I don't. You want the Supreme Court speculation. It's almost to a point now, we have to joke about it. Hey, Joey, we have to joke about it a little bit because it is so disturbing, so tragic, so sad, whatever adjective
this is
you
Veg
want.
Now. He's got a new name, okay?
Oh,
the Aging
hey,
Hippie.
So we could call it the Aging Hippies Conspiracy Channel, formerly known as Veg, like Prince and all that.
That works. I do like Veg-O-Matic, but I get
it works.
It works.
And Veg's strength is not what name he calls himself; it's his thoughts. He really has
correct.
Really things to ponder that he posts and puts up. Well, first of all, I don't have any idea what the court will do, and I would question.
They won't recuse themselves, just like Anti-Guy said. Would say that.
There you are. I was going Anti-Guy. You stole my next line. What I'll be looking at most: does Clarence Thomas vote? And of course, this is different because his wife, right, is linked directly to the January 6th insurrection. She helped call for it. She spoke after. So I mean, this is the ultimate conflict. But we have to keep in mind this crazy idea that the Supreme Court has no ethics. That's not made up. They don't have any ethics written in. They are totally in control. Whatever they want to do, they can do. I really don't know. I am glad in one way. I think we need to resolve it because it's continuing. Just today, I think in Illinois, 5 voters filed a petition to have Trump removed from the ballot. So we need a definitive ruling now. I've read a number of columns on it, and it's all over. It's all over the spectrum. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. The only people that know what they're going to do is the Supreme Court.
Right.
That's it. So I'm not trying to duck the issue. I think forced to make a decision, I would go. The ruling will be 5-4 in Trump's favor. That would be, but I'm not saying that with any sense of conviction. I'm saying that with looking at the makeup of the court. It's interesting because there are all kinds of states involved, but most of them, Colorado and Maine are in the forefront right now because Colorado Supreme Court has ruled. Now, what I found interesting, I went back and looked at it, and one of the questions people, keep saying, or one of the comments that they have is, well, Trump hasn't been found guilty of insurrection. If you read the Supreme Court's decision, right, from Colorado, it says the evidence clearly established that President Trump engaged in insurrection. So it has been established without having to use the argument that it was established by the House. The Senate, of course, did not vote to enact anything against Trump, but it's certainly, so you've got positive things. The other thing I think is interesting. Now, here's one, okay? Again, talking about the 14th Amendment, which is what we're talking about. Basically, as we said before, the brief version is it was put in place at the Civil War to keep Confederates from holding positions. That's what, it was used primarily for that. But however, it's still there, still exists. It's Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And there's two parts to that. Well, three parts, really. First of all, it doesn't exempt the president. They've tried that because it says any officer of the United States. So I would assume the president has to be an officer of the United States. That's clear.
Commander in chief. That's an officer.
The second thing is has sworn to uphold the Constitution, which of course he does and has, but engaged in insurrection or rebellion. That's one. Or, and this I find interesting, given aid or comfort to the enemy's list thereof. Well, Trump is definite. I think he's guilty of engaging in the insurrection.
The fact that he did nothing, he aided them.
But there's all kinds still continuing.
But Bill Barr has said that because he hasn't been convicted of it, that they can't do that.
That's Bill Barr also said Donald Trump was a great guy.
No, I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
I know you are. I know you are. But that's the problem. That's the problem. You're playing devil's advocate. The problem is that we really don't know. What does, and we're not done with that yet. He's still facing trials on the insurrection. I looked at the statistics this week, and 1,200 have been charged, and 900 have been convicted. Which of course still doesn't begin to touch the number of people that were there. Right. I don't know what the crowd was, but let's do that. History. We get caught up in history as it's something in books, but history is actually people living in a certain time. Would you agree? That's history. So do you remember what you were feeling and thinking and doing on January 6th? The notorious insurrection?
I knew exactly what I was doing. We were doing an after-school meeting with what's called our PLC group at school, my colleagues. And one of the colleagues said to me, "Yo, Bride, you checking out what's going on at the Capitol?" I had no idea what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. And then I signed off. I went on, and I got angry within 10 seconds. I knew what was going on, and I saw the signs. Then I texted that person back, and he didn't want to listen to me. He said, "Well, I don't." I said, "You know who these people are?" "Well, no, I don't want to jump to any conclusion. This could be," and I said, "You know who these people are," and I didn't speak with him for around 8 months after that. And that's not easy to do as a professional. You kind of have to speak with. You say hello, but it's not much I can say. And this was a colleague.
So you were divided. We stand in perpetuity.
And there was no other way. But it was to me, Dave. January 6th was so obvious right from the get-go. As soon as you saw that, you knew that the fix was in. And it was Trump was behind. And the fact that he didn't send anybody there to alleviate the problem, which anybody, I mean, if that had been Black Lives Matter, we know exactly what had happened. If that had been any Democratic
Antifa,
president, right?
Yeah, my thing was, of course, as regular viewers know, I live in Crystal City, which is 3 metro stops from Washington D.C. But during that time, my granddaughter, who now is she's now 16, so what, she have been 13, right, when that happened. She was worried. They were in Australia, living for 2 years, and she was worried that I'd get in trouble by going and protesting. So she said, "Grandpa, you can't go on January 6th." And I probably, and I said to her, "Okay, I'll stay home." So as it approached, I talked to my wife Judy. I said I wouldn't go into D.C. I didn't say I wouldn't go to the metro stop here in Crystal City. So I said, "You want to come with me?" She said, "Yeah, we'll go down there." So we got down there right before noon. So it was right as the rally had ended at the first part on the near the White House, and just tons of people pouring off the metro trains. And I said, "Okay, I got to do something." I mean, I'm looking at their signs. So there were 2 relatively young, when I say everybody's relatively young to me now, but they were probably in their 20s. One was a little bit older, probably near 30, one was 20. And they were looking at a map. And they had their Trump regalia on. And so I went up to him, I said, "What do you guys do?" He said, you're looking for a place? He said, "Well, we're looking for a place to eat." I said, "Well, we're going to eat. Why don't you come with us?" So I wanted to, pick their brain. So we actually ended up, we have a shout out to my favorite pizza place here in Crystal City, We the Pizza. So we went there, and the 4 of us are sitting down, and we're talking. We're having this political talk. And one was worried because one of their brothers was still there. So obviously he went to the Capitol. They did not, right? I mean, but we're watching it on the screen, and they're just, I mean, it was really, Brian, it was Twilight Zone-ish in the sense that they were seeing the same pictures I was seeing, right? And we're arriving at 2 completely divergent conclusions.
That's not a good thing when you have an insurrection.
Well, I mean, they didn't see an insurrection.
No, that's what I'm saying, but
they saw patriots having their voice heard because the election had been stolen from Donald Trump. And so it was kind of interesting when you hear it directly from someone like that. And I said, that one I'll just salt away and realize that I would say now what I think is more frightening, Brian, and on this anniversary, the country is more divided today than it was on January 6th that day. No question in my mind. The positions have hardened on the right. They've won some key skirmishes, if you want to say battles. At this point, I can't see any, we've said this, but it bears repeating. I can't see anybody beating Donald Trump as long as he is eligible to run in terms of the primary Republican. So, okay. Of course, foregone conclusion that this cough you have is COVID. And then the other thing would be but ladies and gentlemen, you can't get it over the internet.
No, I wear a mask with that. I must have swallowed a little bit of water the wrong way.
No, you've got COVID. You're demonstrating. No, so you have this great division that continues. I mean, how, like you said, I saw it, and I used to be a person that, well, maybe. No, there's no maybes here. Okay, that was terrorists, insurrection, trying to overthrow a decision of the public that in turn was a decision that could not be overturned because it was the right one, because the election was fair.
Well, that, but of course,
well, no, that's what I'm saying. That's,
the people up top. I'm talking about the Supreme Court,
right?
I think there's 2 forces here. There is the force that they actually feel like they're on a team and they're going to stay with the team, or even if they're willing to be quote unquote fair, I still think that the court will be intimidated. It's one thing to say, well, I'm on the Supreme Court, I can vote the way I want to. But I still think, just like, people, you have this skull to hide your thoughts. We can have what people are publicly saying and what they publicly think are 2 different things.
Of course.
And even a Supreme Court justice is capable of that.
Right. Oh,
Because
no,
he or she is a
especially
human
all of them are, but 6 are especially susceptible because of their conservative beliefs, and this is a conservative cause.
And there, Clarence Thomas is another one. When they mention
okay.
the recusals, it's not going to happen.
Well, let's look a little bit. I also wanted to talk just a little bit about your COVID. We'll continue to talk about, but a little bit about Donald Trump and
By the way, folks, I don't have COVID, but it sounds like it.
The Donald Trump in regards to the January 6th. What's he been doing recently? Okay, now he's out running, right? So first of all, he's already pledged that he will pardon all the rioters.
Rogers will like that.
It's right there, okay? Now, of course, Trump is nothing if not whack. So I didn't know this. I don't watch his rallies, but he's had a couple already in the new year. The first one, this is how it started. It opened by playing a rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner sung by January 6th defendants in jail. Very first rally, that's how it opens the new year. He continues to refer to January 6th as a beautiful, quote, unquote, day. Tell that to the families of the 5 Capitol Police who lost their life that day. It was a beautiful day. I don't think so, Donald. He continues to call, as called and continues to call, the January 6th defendants, both patriots and hostages. Okay? Now, he's also both his PAC, which may be illegal that he did this, but his PAC, Political Action Committee, contributed $10,000 to one of the groups aimed at getting the January 6th defendants free. Now, that's Trump. We've got the defendants. But here is the first poll of the year along the question of who is responsible for the insurrection. Washington Post poll. 1/4 of Americans. Now, that's what you always have to say. I always say 1/4 of the Americans polled because I'm still somewhat skeptical, especially in the modern age, of polls being actually representative. What are you doing? Signing a bill for lunch, or what are you doing there?
No, our fan out there, our biggest fan, Joey Folger, keeps sending me messages that I have COVID. I'm telling him to go to bed.
You do.
No, I gotta.
No. So here's a scary statistic for everybody. Think about this, ladies and gentlemen, and friends of the show. According to that poll, 1/4 of the Americans polled believe the FBI was behind the insurrection.
Right,
Really?
and that's just that shows
Really?
the state of the Republican Party. Well, look, I mean, you have entire nations and you have entire regions that believe in certain things, and we say, well, they're kind of fucking nuts because they believe that this is going to happen, that's going to happen. So why is it so unusual that this group of, right-wing lunatics would believe that kind of bullshit?
Unfortunately, there's no restriction against lunatic white fringe voters from voting. So the question becomes, will they vote? And I would urge people to really look at the polls sometimes as they come out. They're looking at one I was reading this week. They did a disqualification of the poll itself. They said it was Trump in the poll. Trump, I forget which state it was, but Trump was beating Biden by about 4 percentage points or 5. But they said, and then the next line was, but in people who actually were planning to vote, Biden was winning. Now, what the hell is that? Right? I mean, what is that? That whoever ran that poll, whoever commissioned that poll, just shouldn't be doing it anymore, because of course, one is pro and anti, and the other is anti and pro. Which way you want to look at it. So we've got that. Now, just again, so far this week, let's just let people know, and it's nothing we're letting them know. Yeah, imagine the FBS as a child of the '60s. That's pretty radical in and of itself. What do we know that Trump has pledged already? We talked a little bit, but let's look at some of his other pledges, Brian. Here's what we've got. He's already hinted at suspending the Constitution. He believes there are problems with the Constitution that only he can solve. He has already said that he will invoke the Insurrection Act,
Right.
Which, for anyone who's not familiar with that, it allows the president to use the military as a domestic police force. It's the only time in which it can be used. And if people say, no, he won't do that. Well, twice he tried it twice, and people don't, or they forget. He tried it twice in his previous presidency. He tried against Black Lives Matter and was shot down by the military. And he tried to hold on to the power after the election. And he was shot down both times. He's talking about building vast deportation camps. And just imagine that idea. Yes, it happened. Okay. We had the internment camps of Japanese Americans. And that was one of the, slavery was our darkest forever. And I think the, insurrection camps were second. But now we're going to do, can you imagine? I mean, if I were any minority, I would be concerned that, today it's the Mexican or the Hispanic or the Latino or the Chicano or community. Tomorrow, who knows, right? He has already pledged to weaponize the Department of Justice. And I think something that's getting underplayed, but is really something that could lead to Trump as the eternal dictator of America. He's talking about mass firings of career civil servants that do not take a loyalty oath to the president. Think about that. The loyalty has never been to the president. The loyalty of the United States Constitution. And we should be glad.
And he also wants to go after the press. And we know which press we're talking about.
Well, of course. I think, unfortunately, of course, now we've reached a point where, just like everything else, the press is divided, or Americans divide the press into camps. Fox News is news, and MSNBC is propaganda, or vice versa, or vice versa. And kind of, Paul, I think what Trump is so brilliant at, well, there's a number of things, and you do have to. He is brilliant. Okay, he's dumb, but he's brilliant at the same time. He is really good at playing the victim. And every time something bad happens to him or a story, that's they're attacking us. And he's been using that line. It's not me, it's you they're coming after. It's not me alone. It's you they're coming after. So certainly, as we leave the first week of January of 2024 of election year, not much good. Are you going to play something from Biden? Is that why you?
Well, I know somebody mentioned. I guess Global Solidarity mentioned Google the Biden speech, so that came up, but it's a 40-minute speech. So I don't know that.
Well,
show
I think
that.
What it
did
was.
Did you see
was,
it?
Yeah, I did. I didn't watch it live.
Can you give us a 2-minute synopsis?
Yeah, basically what it was is, as you've been asking, he did what you've been asking. He came out as much firing as Joe Biden can at Donald Trump. Some of it couched
a threat to democracy, that kind of thing.
Yeah, very much so. This is it. He mentioned Trump. I think they said, well, he mentioned in the beginning, the middle, and end. So it was clearly the way he's going to approach it, which, I think is something that, he's tried. One of the problems with Joe Biden, I think, is Joe Biden himself, not the age, although of course people factor that in. But what I think is he really does. He kind of comes from, I can make deals, and that's what he was in the Senate, right? He was kind of a broker. As vice president, same thing. Was would go actively to do it. So it's almost like saying, I don't know, a quarterback. We'll see a lot of quarterbacks in the next few weeks as we go to the Super Bowl. A quarterback who completely freelances, being forced to be a drop back passer, or the reverse, a drop back passer, being forced to be a scrambler. And so Joe Biden has to come out of that. Yes. Now, Anthony, that is something that is definitely disturbing, because if that indeed does happen, then...
Do you believe in those? I mean, I believe what Anthony's posting, but with bots and things like that, how can we even know that?
Okay, you really
Russia's not involved in that kind of. I mean, I don't get into conspiracy, but they do. Russia did get involved.
Here's the bottom line. Today I had lunch with a friend. We've been friends since kindergarten, and we both ended up in the Washington D.C. area. And Bruce McCulley, and Bruce retired December 29th from a career in cybersecurity with both the House and the Senate. So he's been on the cutting edge.
He's on the inside, not the outside.
No, this is an inside. Now, certain things he can't say because of that.
I understand that.
But
he can generally speak.
But yeah, he just said, don't believe anything right now that's coming out, because that isn't like, if it says it's Washington Post, then you can kind of believe that the Washington Post did it or said it. Doesn't mean it's true, right? One of the things, and as someone who worked in the journalism business for more than a decade, the print end, you don't really think about it back then. You were always at the mercy, if you will, of the people that you interviewed. But I didn't run across anyone like we see out there today. And there were some bad politicians that I covered. So between there being no holes, civility, meanness is now an American way. In his speech yesterday, I guess, Trump, right? Yesterday, he delivered this line. Joe Biden speaks of democracy. He couldn't even read it. And he made fun of his stutter. When the hell did that become acceptable? Well, it became acceptable when Donald Trump did it in 2016.
Right.
That's really when it became. I mean, people were always, kind of, but Trump is just, and people like that. They say he speaks his mind. The problem is his mind is delusional and deranged.
What they want is somebody without a filter. And traditionally we've had every decent human being has some type of filter that says, maybe I shouldn't say that. Well, he's saying that this pays off because, again, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, but Dave, there's got to be something to what you're saying as far as, that people find that acceptable and actually enjoy it. There's something sick about it.
I think there's two things in the back of virtually everyone's mind, and it depends on how you handle it. I think change has always been the constant, correct? That's the only thing that's constant. What's it saying? The only thing consistent is change, and that's true. But the rate of change has speeded up so much that,
and that's directly from technology too.
Oh, correct. And you're not gonna. I mean, like I said, listening to Bruce today, my friend Bruce talk about AI, man, wow. I mean, it's Terminator is not that far fetched, right? I mean, it's science fiction, but the battle of machines against man and who uses it. We were talking about that. It's something I've always said too. With technology, with science, with any object, with anything, with any document, in and of itself is not really evil. It's how it's used. You could use Mein Kampf to fight against it, a Hitlerian type of thing, or you could use it as Adolf Hitler did to support. I mean,
you can use it to inflict pain or to give pleasure. I mean,
right? No, and of course in America right now, that pain pleasure is 1/3 is pain, the other third is pleasure, and then who knows the third in the middle. And that's really that's where we are. I mean, people say it's 50-50. It's not 50-50. It's roughly a third, and a third. And I don't know which. Obviously they're not equal, so I don't know which one is the larger third, but they're there. You talked a little bit earlier too. It's something I want to bring up. You were talking about the threat of violence. Well, we don't need the threat. I don't know if you're aware of this, and you probably are, but you may not be. On January 3rd, how many days ago? 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in 6 states. There were bomb threats to the Capitol.
With the courts or
capitals?
State capitals?
State capitals, 6. And they were, 5. Georgia, Kentucky, Michigan, Mississippi, and Montana. Now, That prompted the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, to say there was an astounding number of threats in recent months. There's been threats on congressmen. There was threats made toward.
And we know where they're coming from. They're generally coming from the right. Generally,
at this point, now, what happens? How do you beat the enemy if you decide there's no other way other than violence? I mean, right now the left.
Well, how do you deal with a bully?
Punch him in the nose.
Right now, but if you're in school, how do you deal with a bully? Same
Still
thing.
Punch him in the nose.
But if you're the teacher, see,
punch him in the nose.
Punch him in the nose. Okay.
No, of course. I mean, the problem becomes, or a problem becomes that violence has become acceptable. I mean, I was really worried that maybe we wouldn't have a school shooting. Do you realize we've already had one?
Yes, I do know that.
A major one.
6.
One dead, 5 injured, 2 still critical. One who was critical is the principal who tried to talk the kid down. Now, Iowa has, it was in Iowa. Iowa just not too long ago passed you do not need a permit or license to carry a weapon. Worked out real well, Iowa.
Right.
So, I mean, in this week, all these things we're seeing, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. I can't imagine by June or September, after Labor Day is the real big run. I can't imagine. And then we still have the 4 trials of Trump out there, 91 charges, still undecided. And now we're going to do a real rapid thing because, like I said, this kind of gave me, I just jotted some things down that we're saying what has impact on elections? Well, just about everything has impact on it. So let's start here. At the end of the month, your favorite NRA person, Wayne LaPierre, is done. He walked away, and that's because this Monday, his trial, he's on trial with other NRA officials, are accused of using $64 million from donors for personal expenditures, hotel rooms, hookers. Okay. Now the problem becomes
that's a lot of
great.
hookers.
I know, but the problem is great. But the NRA has done its damage. Okay. People say, well, the states are still passing legislation to open up guns rather than close them. The red states. Okay. So that damage is done. I mean, yeah, it's nice. Okay. But the NRA isn't really necessary much anymore because it's become self-perpetuating that there's a large enough group of Americans, especially in the red states, who just feel that any gun restriction is wrong because immediately if you make any gun restriction, 2 days later, authorities are going to come and take your weapons, which of course is not going to happen, but it's there. Now, news that fizzles, but seemed to be big, but has sparked more conspiracy theories. This past week, of course, they released a document about your favorite sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein. That had a list of names, but the names were people who visited the island, which doesn't mean they did anything. But there was, very few. Bill Clinton was on there.
Tell you what, if he did do anything, he's already on my shit list anyway.
Well, but we don't know. Here's
we don't know. We don't know. Right.
Okay.
Dershowitz on it.
But Dershowitz is on there a lot.
Right.
Michael Jackson. Okay. Stephen Hawking. So it's just.
How about that magician? Like
David
Copperfield.
Well,
who knew?
Look,
I don't know, Dave. It's just
it should be no surprise. The rich are different than you and me. Fitzgerald was right. Okay. In American, Gatsby. It's a different world, Brian. It's something we can't comprehend.
I still think that if a person's a shit, it's not like the money made them that way. I think that it becomes more evident when they have
more
money.
Opportunity. Would anybody? And people have to remember, Epstein was using it for his own gain. It wasn't like. it was also, he wanted to be this successful something that he'd never been. And now suddenly, he's getting his picture taken with Donald Trump. He's getting his picture. Yes. Well, Anthony, what that is, it's actually a second. She's already been, the civil suit against Trump has already been upheld. Trump went and did it again after he was found guilty. Well, you don't find guilty in a civil suit, but after he was fined for doing it. So, I mean, he's just incorrigible. He can't stop himself.
But he's not going to pay. See, it's like Steve Bannon, convicted, but the judge gives him an out. So, he plays this system, which just shows you just how poor the system is. That, this is what it's come down to, is you're playing the courts for fools.
So, you're looking at the NRA will be in the news. What impact will that have on the election? It'll have some, perhaps. You've got Epstein back in the news, and that will continue. And you've got the crazies bringing back Pizzagate, which should be, that should be, but everything's going to bring back, it never ends, it just shifts, right? So now the sex trafficking is not out of Comet Ping Pong Pizza here in D.C., but it's out of Epstein's Island. Now, the other thing that's going to play a huge role, and this may come back to where Anthony was saying about minorities moving away, there is a border crisis. Okay, it's not, there is a crisis in the sense of people coming to get in.
Right. It's okay? Incredibly high.
300,000 in December alone.
I heard it was 350, but that's still high. It's still very high.
Yeah. And there's, so of course we're going to make politics out of that. So your favorite.
And it seems like Biden wants to do something with it, but they're not even going to allow it to come through.
Well, see, that's the other thing about people.
You're going to give them what they want, and then they say, no, we don't want it. We will not do anything to help you.
Well, it's a complex issue in the sense that can we assimilate 300,000 people with the current immigration system? I don't think we can. You know what I mean? So you have to do something. But who does it? Because if it gets to Washington, it won't get done because either Democrats, will shoot it down, or the Republicans. Already the Republicans, they there's a group of them led by your favorite, Mike Johnson. I know you subscribe to a lot of his religious beliefs, and I accept that.
He's an atheist? I didn't know that.
No, he's not an atheist. He's the opposite. He and a congregation of 60 House Republicans went down to Eagle Pass, Texas, which is a border town, to stage this idea of this is Biden's border crisis. No, it's America's border crisis, okay? But apparently what's happening too, Brian, which I wasn't even aware of so much, it's not just Mexicans and South Americans and Latin Americans coming over the border. They're coming from other places too. They're getting,
Haiti.
Yeah, all kinds, and any place. I mean, so it's
but 350,000 in 1 month, it's not sustainable.
Well, and that's the other thing, and of course, then Abbott and some of the other Republican governors put them on buses.
Right, and so now it embarrasses because in the Democratic cities they have to say no, and then because you can't take them, especially in cities.
Well, can't you take a few in your house?
We have the largest Mexican population, I think, outside of Mexico, right here in Bridgeton.
I know. And the thing is, the majority, and if you want to use vast, it's a cliche, majority, are law-abiding. Except for things that would lead them, like they're not law-abiding with the registration of vehicles and license. That would. And
by the way, those plates are coming from red states too, which is kind of ironic.
But I mean, there's just as I said, I think it bears repeating. The whole time that Trump's really first moment was when he came out with the Mexicans being rapists, and you remember that was like very early on in his campaign. And yet at the same time, construction was going on of his then Trump Washington Hotel. I never saw an Anglo worker there ever in construction. I'm sure. So we let's see. He would be more interested in first helping these people, and not so much. Yeah, well, that's true. I mean,
which just goes to show you with religion in itself, Dave. I don't want to turn this into a theological discussion, but it just shows you it's just a veneer
The
and a
problem
game that
becomes,
people play.
again, it's how you use your religion, right?
Right.
It's, you can profess to be a Christian, but if you
Walk
don't act
the
as a Christian,
walk and just
you're
shut
not.
up with it. Just
Yeah. And
do
I've met,
what you
and
believe.
I've met some very, very good Christian ministers, Christian lay people. I mean, just because you're Christian doesn't mean you're bad. But I think it's really bad if you're bad and you're a Christian, if that makes
Right,
sense.
because you ignore what you defend.
Right.
Can we go back to that here?
Yeah, go that. Governor Craig Abbott, the Texas Department of Public Safety, and the Texas National Guard continue to work together to secure the border, stop the smuggling of drugs, weapons, and people into Texas. Well, yeah, but you know what? Right now, it's not working. And so, what will we, by November of 2024, Election Day, what will the immigration look like? That's another thing that, started this week with the Republicans are going to make it a key issue. No question.
Well, also, can we just go revisit this idea with all these people coming up, whatever the reason or the reasons, because they must be multifaceted. This shows you most of the places around the world where there is despair, it usually means they can't run their own governments. They have too much lawlessness. And this goes around the world with this crap. And maybe we forget that there's not many countries like this in Western Europe. And you're going to continually see these people trying to get out of these situations. But it's never going to solve the problem, because what's going to happen is at some point there's just too much of an influx. And then as you've seen, even in Bridgeton, I mean, you walk down the street, nobody's speaking in English. So it's turned the country upside down. Now, I'm not being anti-immigration. I'm just saying, like what you're saying is, 350,000, you've got to be able to control your borders. This thing cannot sustain itself. And this just shows you how screwed up the world is. And then if you amplify what's happening with climate change, this thing's just going to get worse. People are going to keep coming. We're lucky we have an ocean, because otherwise I think you would see, great movement from the Middle East coming here.
And I think your point is well taken. It's a worldwide problem, not just America's problem. And then people will point to, again, it has racial implications, because people, well, we don't have that problem with Canada. Well, Canadians don't want to come here because they don't have guns. They're fine where they are. They obviously like the cold.
They're just fine.
That's just it. They're not. Their politics is such that, it's nobody's shooting anybody. Nobody's jumping up and down. There aren't drug cartels chopping people's heads off and putting them on poles in front of their homes.
Well, in general, Dave, your son would be able to kind of comment on this, but as a layman, if we look at where most of the progress has happened in the world, it's always been in the northern latitudes, because the actual climate of certain latitudes makes it difficult when you have large populations to be able to be successful. And whether it is actual climate change with things getting warmer, or as it was, it's just too difficult to have this burgeoning population, this population bomb. And again, here you have to look at the Catholic Church too, because these people,
true,
they're hook, line, and sinker, no contraception, and we're going to have a child at the age of 15 or even younger. Well, this is what's happening. We have baby machine happening.
And did you see? Bring us back to the Supreme Court this week. Of course, the big news was the rule on the Colorado banning of Trump, but also they say they're going to take up the issue of can mandatory needed emergency abortions take place in states that have banned abortions. I'll be really interested to look at that one. Because that's got. I want to see as much bad stuff on abortion from the Republicans as we can, because I think that is an issue that could help get young voters out. I think if you can link it in some way. Which I think there are groups actually doing a very good job of that at this point.
Do you think, and I hope I deliver this the right way, that it is true with young, for example, certain subcultures within the youth are just not that concerned about politics.
But that's always been true, Brian. I mean, it's nothing new.
Then we're going to have an election that is so tight because they'll
right,
either not vote or they will have this protest vote and vote third party.
I mean, I saw somebody, a columnist who I kind of like today, wrote and said, look, they said, how bad is it? He said, really bad. They said, well, in a historical perspective, he said the only thing that was like it was the vote right before the election right before the Civil War. That's it. And this may be worse. We don't know. Okay. Now, now we're looking at these world situations too that are affecting us. So we've still got ramifications coming in from Gaza and Israel. Biden, whether it's rightfully or wrongfully, is being viewed as pro-Israeli. That seems to be, where he is. And there's coming up in D.C. next week, maybe, supposedly the largest rally coming up supporting the Palestinians. And I don't know, will there be pro-Hamas? Of course. I mean, that goes with the territory. But it actually, that's was the focal point, again, is going to play in politics, because here's what happens. I don't know if you saw this week, Claudine Gay, who was the president for 6 months of Harvard, she resigned because of the fire. And basically... And
she actually, didn't she vaguely blame it on racism?
Well, here's what happens, okay? This is, basically summation. I mean, it would take forever really to explain it, but basically what happened is 3 university presidents of very prestigious schools, Harvard, Penn, and MIT, appeared before a congressional committee and were asked by your favorite Republican from New York, Stefanik. Basically, she said, in essence, should colleges accept,
any type of protest that espouses genocide of the Jewish people.
Correct. And actually, what all 3 said is not a bad answer, okay, in one sense, but it's a very bad answer politically. They all said it depends. Well, really, that's the statement. I mean, but not when it comes to genocide. Okay,
right.
I think you have to.
They could have voiced it in a different way, and they tried to do the traditional route of giving a legalese type of answer, and that doesn't work with them.
Exactly. So what was happened? Okay, so the president of Penn gone, but there was another issue there. There's a large constituency back years ago of Jewish students going to Penn, and apparently that's dwindled as you go, more multicultural across. And so there were a number of very deep-pocketed alumni who were withdrawing their contributions, some of them in millions of dollars, to Penn. And then with Gay, she did, which I don't understand at all. I have no idea why anybody would do this, but President Biden did it. Why you would plagiarize, I don't get it.
Especially if you are somebody who's at an institution like Harvard.
Well, I mean, even if you're going,
able to stand on your 2 feet and just be able to speak, but extemporaneously.
Why, and this idea, well, I didn't know it was. Well, yeah, you did. Okay, yes, you did. And
that's like Nikki Haley saying,
well,
of course I didn't. I know that slavery was the main reason why we had the Civil War. Of course, I didn't even mention it. It was so obvious,
Well, but of course, the reason she didn't mention it is because she wants to get voters
from South Carolina who don't believe.
Yeah,
right,
and everywhere. So, but the other thing that kind of gets lost in this shuffle, it's emboldened Stefanik, and she's actually tweeted, "We'll get more. I'm not dealing with it. We're going to go after the woke agenda and political bias on college campuses." So already you have, I think, the normal MAGA supporter does not have a college degree, pretty much. And so there's already this anti-elitism, where they feel that, we lord it over. And I'm sure, Brian, any of us have gone to college. Big deal. I went to college, whoop. But my vocabulary is larger than if I hadn't gone, probably. I'm able to hold some more ideas in my head. So in general, if you go to college It can certainly make you more liberal in certain ways, depending, Now, also conservatism.
Well, first of all, it gets
thrives.
you away from mom and dad. So
Well,
you don't
that's true.
immediately say, oh, mom's right or dad's always right.
But I
When
mean, so now,
it's a tendency.
so what does Stefanik do between now and November? How many colleges are hit? How much support does it get? Does it turn it around? So that's in play, and that's all this stuff has happened this week, Brian. Now, I know I'm going to reveal something now because I've already talked about your COVID, but we all have.
I haven't coughed for the last 30 minutes. Now you're going to make me cough again.
There you were.
So are you going to? Is this a big reveal like that? I'm going to be shocked with about you that I don't know.
No, you're not going to be shocked. It's about you.
Okay.
And I want to let. For a long time, ladies and gentlemen, Brian has.
Be good to know about me here.
He's happily married, and his wife is an exceptional person. But like all of us, he gets some. What should we say? As Jimmy Carter had lust in his heart, he would never act on it. And he's been torn between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert for a long time. But did you see that your darling? I think he actually settled on Boebert. I think it was the glasses that probably pushed him over.
The glasses,
right. Or the fact that she gave her boyfriend a hand job in Beetlejuice. I don't know what it was, but anyway, did you see Lauren made the news this week?
She's switching.
She switched in Colorado district. Now, Adam Frisch was her opponent in the last. He's a Democrat, and she only beat him by 562 votes. I'm sorry, 546 votes. She now has moved across state to run. Now, when I saw this, that can't be. Think about this. Colorado, you don't have to live where you run.
That's fucked up.
How does a state, how does that work? Well, we're going to see. Lauren Boebert can't hear. So she went to the most conservative district because whoever that candidate, I forget who the candidate was there, was not running, right? Now, that also is something that there'll be a focus.
It just shows you how low these people are. They're just
it's win at any but look, I'm sure there are a number of hot-blooded American males, honestly, who think that Lauren Boebert's pretty hot.
Yeah, but that's a sexual thing. It's not a.
That's what they look. Okay. I'm not going to reveal names here, but I will tell you a funny story. You would know the person. I'm not going to embarrass him because he's very honest about it. We were once sitting in. I was on a committee to select the next principal of the high school where you work now. And there was really, really, really a stunning female candidate who made Lauren Boebert look like a PhD. I mean, she just didn't have anything. And this person was ready to vote for it. She said, I guess even I can't do that. And I said, no, even you can't vote. So, I mean, there's always been, Trump is image, Boebert's image, Marjorie Taylor Greene is image. What I'd hoped, and the rift has already developed. They're mortal enemies now, Boebert and Greene.
Yes.
And that's good. I mean, see some of that because if they were combined forces, they would. But that's part of it. There's also Taylor Greene is in the forefront of a get rid of Mike Johnson movement already. I mean, they just kind of cannibalize each other. So there is good there. But the problem is nobody will cannibalize Donald Trump if he becomes president.
Right.
And that's right now as we wind down.
Do they know something, Dave? I mean, I've talked about the threat of physical violence, but do they know something? Do the politicians know something even more deadly? Or more threatening that they know that there's a group out there that is going to do something they've promised? Do you think that that's a possibility? I know, again, this is all speculation.
Well, I think if you were a congressman and January 6th.
Because I think some of those congressmen knew January 6th something was going to go down.
Well, there are. I mean, there's still talk that, again, there'll be no. But sure. I mean, obviously, constituents would get a hold of them and probably say it. And it's there. I mean, look, America's a violent country, Brian. Let's face it.
Yes, it is.
It has always been. I can't say it will always be.
The sports are violent.
But I don't see, any beacon coming down here at the beginning of 2024 that says, okay, we're starting to lose our violence. The numbers are such that we do have more guns than people. That's been pretty well documented. Although it is interesting, a lot of those are held by multiple guns in one owner's hands, but it's still out there. So I think violence is always a possibility. What I'm concerned about a little bit too is, will those on the left, terrified or disgusted or revolted by a Trump presidency, will they turn violent? Because certainly there have been leftist Weatherman, when I was in the 60s and 70s, Symbionese Liberation Army, the MOVE movement in.
But I don't think they have the wherewithal that the fascists have. You know what I mean? It seems like the fascists, like you saw what happened. Well, that's certainly, you would have thought that would have happened in Germany. To a certain extent, it did in the 30s. You had the communists and the socialists who fought them. They actually physically fought them, but it just wasn't enough. And the problem is the fascists on the right, they're the ones that have the guns, unfortunately. Well, there's some on the left that have guns, but I'm saying by far.
Okay, if Chris Rock said it as a joke, he said a couple things. And I think probably one of my favorite Chris Rockisms is this. He said, "You want to stop?" I said, "I'm going to tell you how to stop gun violence, murders." He said, "Charge $10,000 a bullet. You got to really motherfucking want to take that person out if you're going to spend $10,000 to kill his ass." That is true. He also said, though, "Do you want to cut back on this? Let every black person at birth become a member of the NRA. You'll see a difference." And that's been historically proven in the 60s in California. They were going for a looser gun law, and members of the Black Panthers.
Well, that's the only way you even it up. But that's like saying, okay, well, we're gonna bring in 35 18-wheelers into the cities and just start distributing guns to African Americans. That's the way.
Well, I can't speak to any other city. I'm not there in D.C., but there's a hell of a lot of guns in D.C. That would be available, and they're not in the homes of the workers of government. They're not much. But anyway, so I think two things. I think I'll end with this. One is this: we've used up. It's sort of like Chicken Little. The sky's falling. The sky's falling. The sky. But I really do think this may go down historically as the most important election in America's history, even more important than Lincoln's, even more important in certain ways than George Washington's, even though you don't have a country, I understand without, but I'm saying this may go down as on whatever date is, November 3rd or 7th, whatever the election date actually is. If Donald Trump is running, and if Donald Trump wins, I feel safe in saying the America that we have known since George Washington's time. And I think it was interesting, symbolism is lost on the ignorant. But I thought it was kind of interesting where Biden decided to make his speech was right outside Valley Forge. And he actually referenced Washington in a couple ways. Washington rallying the troops at a time, when it looked like America was done before it even became a reality. And of course, the other thing was Washington's courage. He could have led America till he died, and and he said it, he walked away. But I would tell anyone this. If Donald Trump wins, you may have Donald Trump for longer than 4 years. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to be prepared for that. And obviously, somewhere about a quarter to a third of Americans are. So it's that other group. That's one. Secondly, I think you're saying this can be anywhere. This is politics is going to consume us, as it should. I don't think you can ever be too much aware of what's going on politically. But if it's going to be like this, people are going to get tired, and it just becomes a question of, I think, if young people or have any influence over young people, get them to vote. I mean, that's part of it. Get the vote out. But again, some of us, like Brian, it doesn't really matter whether you work personally to get the vote out or not, because the township that you live in, which is where I lived, is going to vote Republican. Okay? But the city is going to vote, you could go work in the city, but it's going to vote Democratic.
Right.
And your state is going to go Democrat. So and same thing here. Unless I decide to go work in the mountains of Virginia, where I live is going to be, if Trump wins, there will be a civil war.
Or there will be a retreat of liberals to Canada. And
well, a lot of people
sort of happening already in a certain sense.
They actually have an article this week about leaving. Different people made, like Bruce Springsteen said in 2020, if Trump wins, I'm going to Canada. And others, not just him. The problem becomes, though, of course, Canada. I mean, it's not as easy. You don't just
right.
drive
It's not as easy, right?
Just like you don't drive it, and you don't think for a moment. You might be better off looking to go to, I don't know, Costa Rica or somewhere where they. But I didn't realize, quite honestly, and I'll leave with that thought. Following my son's escapades around the world, it's just not as easy. I mean, you get in and visit for a little bit, but to stay, it's hard. With that, thank everyone and thank you for the comments. We had some really good comments tonight. Yeah, sure we plan to be here from time to time. Obviously, something will come up. If Brian's COVID gets worse, we'll have to keep an eye on that. These will vote for their superior status between the three branches of government. We'll have to see, Global. I don't know.
I'm betting that what you said, what I said, we're looking at around a 5-4, and it doesn't look good.
No, at this point. So
Trump's
Brian,
never going to sit in jail, and nor is any of the other son of a bitches.
Have a good week, and I will see everyone hopefully as next week when we do a show. Unless, as I say, we will keep track of Brian's COVID and make sure. Right. I will.
I don't have COVID. Never had it. Okay.
That's weird that you've never. You might be the only.
I wear my mask all the time in school. I mean, I love the mask. This thing has been. I haven't been sick in 6 years.
Well, you got COVID now, but you're telling me now. You wear it in school. That's one thing. Do you wear it when you go out everywhere?
Yes.
Do you wear grocery store?
Yes. I only take it off when I go to a restaurant. When I sit down.
You can't. Why can't you eat with it on?
No, it's not going to work. But no, I love it, and it's not just COVID. It's everything from, flu to farts. I don't want to deal with it.
Would it? I know that you, a few years ago prior to COVID, you registered as HIV positive. That wouldn't help then, the mask then?
No, I've got clean veins here, fella. I'm all right. I got myself going, so. But no, I'm going to keep using the mask. Even when the whole thing's over with COVID, I'm still going to use the mask. I love it. I don't love it, but I know why I saw so many Japanese use it.
Well, I think you should really be trendy with it. So I'm going to suggest this as my closing remark: continue to use the mask, but use two of them. Put one on your head too, but don't use it as a mask. Get a pair of tighty whities, put that on top of your head, and then the mask, and a black mask, and wait. That way you can't be accused of they'll call you the zebra, and that's fine.
You never have a loss for imagination, so it's a shame you weren't a painter. Who knows what?
No, it's a good thing I'm not. I am the world's worst artist. So Brian, get the hell out of here.
All right, we'll see you, Dave. Thank you. Tell Judy I said hello. See ya.
Will do.